Well, hello and welcome to a special edition of Something Artsy. And with me today, well, you'll recognize one of the faces, Grace, maiden name Wessel, grew up here in New Ulm, Hennig, Hennig. And Grace, you're at the Martin Luther College at the music department, and sitting in between us is Mike, the composer, I think you said I could refer to him as.
Yes.
And by the way, we're at the Grand Center for Arts and Culture. We're on the second floor, and the New Ulm Journal has already covered this story, but we just thought it'd be kind of neat to talk about it again and let you meet Mike. And Michael, welcome to New Ulm, Minnesota, first of all. He's been fighting something for a week or so, so we're trying to nurse him back to health. Did anybody tell you about all the different Shell's beers you can try as medicine?
They try. We've been talking about this already.
Okay, good. And your name, please.
My name's Peter Michael von der Nahmer. If you just want to have the explanation, Nahmer is a river in Germany, and it means from the river. So I'm basically Mike from the river, if you want to make it very simple.
Good. So, Grace, how did we get here? What's Peter Michael doing here with the Grand and with New Ulm?
So this goes back a couple of years. Mike and I have already been Skyping for over a year. I'm looking forward to this time that he's in New Ulm with us. But we talked about, at a Christmas party in 2015, we talked about how to get more artists in the Grand, working in the Grand. What grants might there be to bring artists here? And I mentioned that it would be great if we could have a composer in residence here that could write music for different groups, different people in the city of New Ulm. And coincidentally, the next week, Michael had contacted our program director and asked about a residency. So, and then he already has worked with the American Composers Forum, which is based in the Twin Cities, and knew about the McKnight Foundation Composer in Residency Grant, which is the largest composer residency grant of its kind. Did I have that right? In the nation. So it's a $15,000 grant, and Mike and I talked a lot, and he filled out a lot of paperwork and applied for the grant, and how this was all going to happen, how we were going to coordinate all this. And the people at American Composers Forum also thought this was a nice partnership between Mike and New Ulm, because he is a German American and he was awarded the grant.
So everything just sounds like it really came together nicely, a little serendipitously, I think is the word I'm looking for. But you had hopes for something like this, and then it just kind of fell into your lap a little bit.
Well, we thought maybe years down the road we'd
Sure.
be more prepared for something like this. But when the opportunity came, it just, we had to wait to see if he would even win the grant or not. So that was, it's a highly competitive process. So,
and this would be the first one in New Ulm. So New Ulm, most people I don't think would have expected New Ulm to be one of the award winners.
Right, and that's I think what they saw in the proposal or in the application was the nice match between Michael being a German American and New Ulm being
pretty German.
Pretty German.
Sure.
Yeah. And then there's other things like the fact that New Ulm does have a history of a lot of professional musicians, whether they're making folk music or other kinds of music. So we have that history, and then we have the Minnesota Music Hall of Fame right here as well, and a history of singing with the Concord Singers, and so I think it's a great match. But I think Mike is going to write more than polka music, or a different genre than polka music.
We've had this discussion about New Ulm, and I've had it with others too, about polka music and old time. And while that's important to the foundation and I maintain that music helped bring us up from the ashes of the tragedy of 1862 and other things that followed, it was that music that maybe had a small part in helping New Ulm to rebound and become the great city that it is. Yeah. But now, there's a tremendous amount of music here, different genres, and all of it high quality.
Yeah, and folk music too. I mean, it's just right up there with all the other different types of music. It's what we're known for. That's what people think of when they think of New Ulm. But you know, to be a professional musician, even to play on weekends, you have to have a good grounding in music, and I'm sure that a lot of people that play folk music also play other kinds of music as well, or are trained in other kinds of music. And so we have a great variety, like you say, of musicians here in New Ulm, and so they should come and meet Mike and make some music with him.
Well, let's talk to our guest of honor here a little bit.
Yeah.
Grace and I have been taking the whole conversation. Michael, so where do you live?
I live in New York.
When my wife grew up in New York, so when you say New York,
Which part?
that means the city.
Yes.
You get to around the country and they go, oh, where in the state of New York did you grow up? But when you're from New York, everybody knows what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was a Staten Island girl.
I live in Queens.
Okay. Yeah. And when you're in Queens or in New York, what do you do?
I work full-time as a composer since 17 years. This is my day job. So I work for concert music, film scores, but most of the time since over 17 years, music theater, opera, musicals, theater music, everything that is connected with telling stories with words and music. This is the kind of main field, but it's really everything. I even did radio. I worked as a journalist for quite a while, and it's always connected in the world of music in some way.
You were born in the States or born in Germany?
I'm born in Munich, in Germany, but my interesting family life is that my great-great-grandmother was born in 1866 in Brooklyn. So I have true New York genes, actually, and her mother was born in Cuba, which makes me German-American Cuban. And my family goes back until the 1600s in America, so I actually have very, very old American genes. One of the family members of the Colt family was actually married into our line, so I can't get much more American than that.
Yeah.
So it's...
We almost should have George Klotzbach here to help us with lineage and family trees and things like that. So, born in Munich, lived in Germany how many years?
I lived in Germany until I was around 24, 25, and I finished my first degree in composition over there. And then I moved right away to Los Angeles and lived in Los Angeles for 5 years as well. And then I moved back again and then worked again as a composer, studied music therapy, did some other stuff as well. Even worked for BMW as a sound consultant and developed new sound systems and stuff. Then I also connected my background in the mind with other research. I worked with neuroscientists, medical doctors, but it's always connected to music and the question, how do we perceive it, how does it work, what does the mind do with music and so on. But it's always music and science, or music and something else in connection.
Well, I think most people would agree that music does evoke certain, depending upon the music, certain feelings. If I'm at the Summit Avenue music series, the chamber music, that's a totally different experience for me than if I'm in my car listening to polka music on KNUJ from Sunday from noon to 3.
Right, yeah.
And you and I have talked a little bit about some of the nuances of music, but to me, this isn't really a nuance. This music does emote or evoke different things, and it depends upon what you're striving for, I guess.
It depends on many, many things. I mean, the effect of music, which is what you're describing, is one of the very earliest things that we study in music therapy or in other forms. It's really much more about the question of what is your social background, what are your general interests, but it's one of the centers of it. My question comes a little step further, actually, which asks the question is, how do you perceive music, actually? And if I learn something from you, how you compose, for example, a piece, which I could do with you, I could teach you in just an hour to be a very small-scale composer and write something with me, but then I can learn something through your process. So the thing that I have been interested in is the creative process and how your mind reflects on this. And then I can learn something about this. So my question was always, what is the mind doing with the music. So it's not only about the effect, but it's really how is your mind working with the music, and what do I learn about you through the way that you perceive music, that you make music, that you interact with me, and all of these things. And all of this comes also in the background then of my music theater pieces. One of the theses that I wrote at New York University was a piece about an elderly lady with dementia, and we had one scene, was an entire music therapy scene, where the main character was in a coma and her daughter was trying to connect with her only through music. And I've never seen something like this in a music theater piece before. So it's the mind and music theater is the thing that I'm fascinated by, and how they work together.
Okay, now the two of you take our audience and what Michael just said and apply it to his time in New Ulm here.
Okay.
What are we hoping to have at the end of, August, when Michael's all done here and he flies back to New York? Where are we heading with this?
Well, we had Meet Mike last night here at the Grand, and we had some people show up, and I think out of the people that showed up, we could have at least three good projects going.
And a project would be,
Right.
he would compose something?
No, this is the whole interesting part about this, that the residency or the whole project for the McKnight Foundation is that they look for composers that are not only good and successful in their own field, but that also have knowledge about working with communities. So the interesting thing in my case was that when I was thinking about doing the residency, what kind of community program could I do that not only reflects my background, but also the many other interests. And because it's a German-American town, and because I'm German-American, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to just reflect this question more, what it means to be German-American today, what it meant a couple of centuries ago. The whole question of going deeper into the essence of the background of being German-American and what the heritage brings with it. So the thing that we're going to do is we're creating pieces with the people of New Ulm and reflect on the history, the heritage, and the German question, what is it German-American, what is this thing?
I'm trying to think of a piece of music, classical particularly, that would take somebody from like the starting point of time to an ending point. And my feeble mind, the one that kind of comes to mind is maybe the 1812 Overture by Tchaikovsky. Kind of takes us through the war of 1812. And are we trying to compose music here, you Michael that is, that really takes us from the roots, the starting point, the birthing of New Ulm to today?
No, I think the question is really much more, what is it that the people from this town do with these questions? So it wouldn't be just a reflection on the music history. This would be almost too broad. And I think this has also been done to just take certain centuries and then put them in music. It's really much more the question of what are the stories in this town? How do the people of this town think of this town, of their background? And then the music can be everything. When I work with teenagers, it can be a hip-hop version for them, or it can be an opera for somebody else. It could be a children's piece. It's really much more than the questions I ask then is what does the piece from you want, from the composer lyricist teams? What is the music asking from the piece? Which is sometimes difficult for people to understand, because most of the times I think people think when you have a piece, you have already a certain idea what the music needs to be. And I have done this in the past, but there's one problem, is that you lose the sight for things that can really happen inside the piece. And maybe the piece that you're asking might have some polka in it, but it might also be that the one person that is interested in creating the piece that has nothing to do with polka at all, because it doesn't help to translate the story. So it's really about how the people reflect on the pieces, and then with my help we will figure out, like, most of the pieces I think will be between 15 or 5 to 15 minutes long, so many short pieces, both with teenagers and with seniors, and then also we want to create the circle of generations, so that in the whole final performance we have pieces by the seniors and the teenagers, and you actually can't make out anymore who is who. So it's really becoming the storytelling of the evening, and that the teenagers see, oh my God, we have similar stories to tell. They have seen the world basically as we, but just a different time. And I think this is a question that I find that the older I get is that it really repeats all, yeah. And what are the new things to tell, and how do we, and how do we tell them? And I think the most interesting part of this, what is your experience? Because even if we maybe have something in common, or if our paths have crossed some way, or we have similar experiences, it's the thing that you experience that is interesting for me. How did you experience this certain time in your life? So it becomes always, I think, about theater in general, is always the question is that we learn from the actors part about ourselves. How do they treat with a problem? How did they find a resolution inside their piece? Did they find no resolution in their piece? So all of these very, very complicated and complex questions are things that I'm very much interested in.
Did you, Grace Henning, a board member at Grand Center for Arts and Culture, realize what you were, if I can use this phrase, getting into with Michael? I mean, this is fascinating.
Yeah, oh, it is. Well, we've learned a lot already about what it takes to accommodate a composer in residence. So we're keeping in touch in texting and seeing what Mike needs here in order to be able to work. I, of course, did not know Michael's extensive background, 6 college degrees, and in working in so many areas, and just the potential here for what can be created. He knows his craft. He knows his craft so well that he can come in here and say, I can teach you how to write lyrics. I can teach you how to write music. I know exactly how to go about it. If you want to take this opportunity, I can make it happen. I don't need to be the one to write the music. You can do that. I can show you how. So that's really been exciting to have somebody that capable that knows that all he has to do is get the people here, and he can make these stories come to life. At one point on our way home from the airport, I looked at Mike and I said, "Are you famous?" Because I think it was 2006, he was one of 3 finalists.
2003 already, yeah.
2003,
Yeah.
One of 3 finalists who was going to have a work premiered on Broadway.
Yeah, it was a big call. I was just finishing my first degree, and I was obsessed already with Broadway. I knew that there was some connection to New York. And so I got a call from producers, and I was totally frightened. I will be very honest. I was this little German composer who was always dreaming about America, but I was scared shitless. And they called and they said, we have heard from 2 people about you that you're doing this strange stuff of connecting different genres and being able to do music theater, but you also have background in classical music, you also have background in other things. Would you be interested in applying for this big thing on Broadway that we're doing? I think they told me that they had 300 or 400 composers worldwide applying for the thing. So we went through different stages. I sent in my music, was the first step, and they liked it very much and found it interesting. Then the next step was that I got the librettos, or the textbook, and they told me, choose 4 songs, whatever you want, and write them, and send them to us in about 6 weeks. And at the same time, I was literally doing what Grace is doing at the moment. I had my finals for my BA in Germany, which is basically that you write around 11 compositions. Yeah, you write an audio play, you write a film score, you write a concert piece, you write pieces and everything. So I was already quite busy at the same time. But I was so excited to do this, and I said, I will write something very, very different. And so the basic idea that they had was use certain popular styles like rock music, rap music, and Broadway styles, but then make them so new and different that they really have something new to say. And I said, well, this is something that I will enjoy doing. And so I made it to the final 3 composers. And it was really one of these experiences that really carry you through your life. Yeah, when you have these bad days, when you think, I'm the worst composer ever, and I can't write any single note, and it all sounds shit. But when you think of these times, then it sounds, it gives you power, and it helps a lot.
That's the German word for crap.
Yeah, and I guess the other nice thing about this is that I think Mike is already kind of enamored with New Ulm, and we've already had conversations about how he can come back maybe in the future, next year or in other years. And so nice for him too, that he enjoys the community and he's just starting to get to know it right now. So he's looking forward to meeting more people and learning more about the community.
Well, I think of the musicianship here in New Ulm, and I count you as one of those. I count Bethel Baldy. We've got Jim McGuire coming over every weekend.
Right.
I mean, we've got tremendous.
We had a guitar player here last night, a very talented guitar player that may be doing some collaborating too.
Yeah.
Mike. Yeah, there are a lot of musicians, a lot of talented musicians. Yeah.
New Ulm loves music.
Yeah, and I think like Ray said, that if this should work out, I think one of the dream ideas could be just as an utopia at the moment, but that in the future we create something like a 1 or 2 week music theater festival in New Ulm, where I do basically the same thing, but then it's really to get all the people together and write something in 1 or 2 weeks, maybe have people from other parts of Minnesota as well coming, and then just communicate about what is their way of expressing themselves through the voice of music theater. Again, whatever that means, but this is something that I just find very, very interesting.
Grace Henning, so Michael mentioned, or perhaps you did, about he could teach somebody how to write music.
Yeah.
Between now, I think he's here in 2 phases. He's here essentially early May to June 12th. So that part, people may be watching, and we might be at the tail end of that when they see this. But then he'll be back pretty much all of August. Is there opportunities to take him up on that challenge of, all right, teach me how to write music?
Yeah. I think, well, Mike would really like to work with some teenagers in New Ulm as well. And so it'd be great if our educators could tell kids in the schools that maybe they see a little bit of potential to write music, or just a really big interest in music. This is a great opportunity for them to take a leap forward in discovering what their abilities are from an expert. So I think are going to do a bit of recruiting so that we can form some teams of teenagers, like a lyricist and a musician that can write some music. This is what Mike would like to do, and be able to tell these stories through the work of teenagers and other age groups from New Ulm too. Yeah.
So how can the audience reach out and make contact with Michael with this project?
Yeah, you can call the Grand, you can call me, you can email the Grand, just get in touch with us some way if you have any interest in this project, even if it's already in June. Mike plans to continue to work with people even while he's back in New York during the month of July. Things can get started even then. So they shouldn't be shy. I'm going to encourage my own children to do some work with Mike, and Dr. Ann is going to be collaborating with Mike on her Gänsefjortel stories with Gertie the Goose and Herbie the Hedgehog, and then we had somebody here who has already written song cycles about the prisoner of war camp outside of New Ulm, and this fits right in with Mike's vision for what kind of content we can have at this final concert. He's also interested in the Native American history in New Ulm, so he hopes to find out more about that. So even if you're a historian who has some knowledge about the history of New Ulm, or a special part of the history of New Ulm that maybe not a lot of people know about, and just want to come and talk with Mike too, they should just feel free to get in touch. What Mike mentioned before about his process, just to re-emphasize that, is he likes to sit down with a person, talk with them, get to know where their interests are, and kind of see a project come out of that conversation. So it's a very organic process and can be kind of a surprising one, and never dull, certainly exciting and interesting. So while this is really new to the residents of New Ulm, we want people to not be shy and to give it a try, because we think it could be something very cool for them.
Okay. Michael, last question, and I know if I don't ask you this, I'm going to get stopped and say, why didn't you ask him this question? Who are some of the people in music history that has had the most influence on you? a lot of musicians, even modern kind of rock musicians, will say Bach, you know, and I'm always surprised when I hear that. But I realize after studying music a little bit, Bach was pretty influential. But who are some of the ones that...
I mean, the way that I studied music in Germany in general is that from a very, very early age on, you really study all of the classical German composers, of course. So I'm generally, I'm of course influenced by them in many ways. But actually, the question I think is much more interesting for me from the point, what is the thing that influences you the most? And I actually believe it's not music. I'm most influenced by everything that asks questions. Yeah, and everything, every aspect of the life. It can be science, it can be reading a book or whatever. It's always the question if what is the thing telling me and how is it that it makes me excited about something. And this is actually my biggest inspiration. So I rarely try to compose like somebody else. I mean, we had to do this in school anyway. But I really, the biggest inspiration that I get is if you show me a poem that you have written, or you show me a newspaper article that you have written or read or whatever, and that you find interesting, and then you tell me, Mike, you know, this is something that I find very intriguing, and then my brain starts to blink and strive and do all these things, and then I dig into what is interesting for you and how can I relate to this, and then it becomes my biggest influence, because most of the pieces that I have written, regardless if they are opera or whatever they are, one of the interesting parts and the reason why I have become such a composer for everything is that I was just always excited by new stuff. Yeah, I wanted to learn more and more, and then I had all these different offers of doing radios or film scoring work or whatever, but I was always interested in learning from other people and their stories. And then if you bring me a story, my mind will say either, oh, I know what the music might be, or I might even say, you know, I don't know yet, but let's talk about this. And most of the times when I have the experience of not knowing exactly where the piece might take me, these are the moments when I know something is very interesting. Because then it might also, the thing that I said before, then it kind of inflames the question in me, oh, what does this piece need? Yeah, and maybe it needs some kind of polka, and then I would probably need to research polka music myself and see what kinds of polka music you could use, but it can really be everything. And so most of the music theater pieces, when you listen to them, each is totally different than the other one. You wouldn't say that, oh, this is totally a Mike piece, because then I have written a children's song that might sound totally different, but it's always the characters and the story that blow me away. Or even I talked to Brian Fink today, and he sent me some images of him, and I was blown away by his images. Yeah, and I said, oh my God, this is, I can already feel it. Yeah, I can feel your images, and I can feel that the images that you're creating and my music really go together. But it can be everything. It's I mentioned this yesterday. I have worked with an astrophysicist, and I had no idea where the pieces might go, and we just talked, and then he had ideas about energy and relationships, and I said, oh my God, this is interesting. Yeah? Or one of the recent commissions that I have, it's called Blutwurz. It's a little flower, and the whole piece was developed because I asked the librettist that I had never worked with before, what is your general interest when you don't write libretti? And he said, you know, I studied botanics, I like plants. And I said, let's see if we can base a new piece on plants. And I said to him, look up a flower or something in your wall that intrigues you for a character. And so he found this little flower called Blutwurz, which is all over the places, and you can't really, it's feisty, and it's fresh and it's strong, and it's everywhere. And I thought this is a terrific metaphor for the entire piece about wherever you go, I will come with you and I will carry the strings. And so again, this was something that came from a totally different directions, yeah, but it can be zoology or chemistry or biology or whatever. I like to think in a scientific way and then translate it into sound and music. So this would be the biggest inspiration.
As you're talking about botany and flowers, I'm thinking of Rossini's The Birds and Holst's, you know, the Planet series, right. and yet I think you're heading in a little bit different direction than they were heading, to be quite candid. And I'm excited to see where this takes you, or takes New Ulm, maybe is the better way to put it. So All right, Grace Hennig, board member at Grand Center for Arts and Culture. Give the audience again the opportunity to reach out to you. How would they do that and learn more, and maybe be participating with Michael?
Yeah, so go to the Grand website and get our contact information. I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me right now. Just call us, get in touch through email, and we can get you an appointment with Mike if you want one-on-one, or if two of you want to team up and say, I'll write music and I'll write text, let's work with Mike, you can do that too. And look for in the newspaper. We're going to try to get more about this in the newspaper. Mike's first impressions of New Ulm, maybe little teasers about what projects he might be working on with the people of New Ulm. So watch the newspaper too for more information on this.
Okay. Michael, one more time, your full name.
Peter Michael von der Nahmer.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Play a little something.
Michael, you want to take us out with something?
What shall we improvise about? Shall we improvise about New Ulm, or what would you like to know?
Improvise about New Ulm. Yeah.
Improvise about the Grand.
The Grand.